time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth and Will Pelagic. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
I don't think we're quite to that spot. I think Monday or Tuesday we'll kind of get there. And I think our guys know we're still, in our mind, kind of in the third quarter of camp. So we're not quite to that spot yet.
It was difficult. I mean, just watching your friends, your teammates running around there doing what they love. I love the game, so it was difficult. But I tried my best, just to motivate them and get them through. So, but I'm happy to be back for sure.
South Carolina linebacker Sky Moore, preceded by Clemson co-offensive coordinator Jeff Scott to lead off Sports Talk South Carolina. Will Pelagic here with you, along with Professor Tom Hayes and producer Jared Rogers-Martin. We hope to be joined by Phil Kornbluth, who was at the Citadel Golf outing in suburban Charleston in just a moment, but having trouble getting in touch with him. But once we do get him up, we will have him join us here in our studios on Main Street in Columbia, South Carolina. Now, when we last left you, we had two practices scheduled today for both the Gamecocks and Clemson. They both practiced earlier this morning. Clemson was coming off of a situational scrimmage Wednesday where they worked on a lot of different things, including down and distance, and also some different things involving the offensive execution, especially also looking back to the way that, of course, the quarterbacks will stand up, with Kelly Bryant obviously in front and a couple of freshmen, one redshirt, one true, battling in his stead. Meanwhile, the Gamecocks are, of course, trying to shore up the depth on the defensive side of the football, and one of the big parts of that we'll hear from today as we had our first chance to chat with the aforementioned Sky Moore, who was, of course, coming back off of a neck surgery that kept him out the entirety of the 2016 season. And Pearl, as we bring this into the picture here for South Carolina to start, the way that this defense goes, as Sky Moore goes, they will also go.
Well, the interesting thing about Sky Moore is in this era of spread formations, Sky has that knack, which is why the pros still like him, even though they're wary of that neck injury, that he plays the pass so well at a linebacker position. You got to be able to cover to play linebacker, not at the next level. And if you've got a guy who can play at the college level, play the pass as well as the run, you've got gravy as far as that's concerned. And that's what Sky Moore does. And the interesting thing is they're playing at Bank of America Stadium. The last time he was in Bank of America Stadium, had two interceptions in the end zone to just douse two North Carolina drives. North Carolina should have won that football game, but for some reason, Sky Moore appeared to be in the Tar Heel jersey in the end zone twice.
As we're joined now by our colleague Phil Kornbluth here on Sports Talk South Carolina, we were talking about the interesting comparisons that we're going to have to see right now for the Gamecocks, especially with the re-addition of Sky Moore. He said that this defense is night and day compared to the one he last played on, Korn, and he is definitely a big part of that difference.
No question about it. His experience, his leadership will all be a big part of whatever improvement they have on defense this year. And we've heard Will Muschamp say repeatedly that this defense, at least in the front 11, should be a better group than what they had last year. So Sky Moore's like it's better than getting a top flight high school recruit, because he comes with all that experience. You're talking about a guy who has been your leading tackler for 3 straight years that he played. Of course, he missed last year. So what he brings to the table is incalculable, guys, and a big, big boost to that Gamecock defense. Good to be back with you. We're coming to you from down at Patriots Point in Charleston, the 19th annual Citadel Kickoff Classic for the upcoming football season, an event that raises money for the Citadel Brigadier Club, and they do a fabulous job. They've raised over $1.5 million over the years for the Citadel Brigadier Club. And it's been our pleasure to be here now for 19 years. We've been here for every one of these. So we always enjoy being down here and hanging out with the Bulldogs, listening to some of their war stories. And they got plenty of that. And Coach Brent Thompson will be joining us a little bit later on once he gets here. So we'll throw that in with all the other good stuff that we've got lined up tonight.
Certainly so, Corn. And as we mentioned South Carolina at the beginning, we'll mention Clemson now. Didn't get a chance to hear from any players today, but we heard from both offensive coordinators, Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott. We'll play excerpts of both of those gentlemen as we go throughout the program. I think one thing that stands out to me is the emergence of C.J. Fuller on the Clemson depth chart, because the one thing that they've mentioned about him is his steadiness. It seemed like we'd heard a lot about Tavian Feaster over the course of the last couple of weeks. I don't want to say that Fuller has become a forgotten man, but it almost felt like his steadiness was almost being overlooked by a lot of people when they look at this Clemson offense in 2017.
Well, the interesting thing is when you talk about running backs and you look at who comes out of what happens as far as competition is concerned, doesn't it always line up because he does everything well? It seems that, well, this guy runs great. Doesn't he look beautiful? And then as soon as the blitz come in, oh, now I see why he's not playing. He's not good in pass pro. So that's the key. Maybe Fuller's the best guy at pass protection.
And that's one thing that they talked about not only with Tavian Feaster, but with all the running backs when asked about them, the fact that they all have to kind of build off of that pass protection. And the one guy who was mentioned, Corn, most by Tony Elliott was Travis Etienne, who was leading rusher in Wednesday's situational scrimmage, including that 60-yard run that kind of burst out as part of his home run-making ability. And he's gotten a lot of the reps now, at least behind both Feaster and Fuller, with Adam Choice being out with a hamstring injury. Choice returned to practice today. But if Etienne can see the field as a true freshman, he can bring big playability for a guy who, again, is so very raw but still so very talented.
True that. And, of course, if you're going to be young in a particular position, then running back is a good place to be because except for the pass blocking and helping to protect the quarterback, which is very important, it's basically get the football, see the hole, and use your natural instincts to do what you do. And Etienne was, as we mentioned last night, kind of a late take in the recruiting class for Clemson. They kind of got on him in the final stages of the recruiting class and had him in for a visit, and they were able to get him to sign their way, and they're very happy about it. He's got a nice, got good size and to go along with his speed. I will be shocked if Tavian Feaster does not emerge as the premier back for Clemson this year. He's got so much talent, speed, size. Unless he's just not getting some things with the offense, some of the key things you have to do to earn playing time, maybe he's not getting that. But I will be very surprised if he does not end up being the guy that gets the bulk of the carries here. I think he's that good, and if seeing him in high school, I'm a little surprised that he hasn't gotten more of an opportunity at this point.
Well, Corn, interestingly enough, they only have 4 guys on scholarship right now at running back. This is usually a stable that is about 5 deep with a bunch of walk-ons pro, and the one thing that Tony Elliott said is that it's not as crowded a room as they're normally used to having.
Well, I've been campaigning because the guy is such good at coming out of the backfield catching passes. Well, hey, why not have Etienne in the backfield if he's that explosive?
Exactly.
And Feaster at a slot receiver. Have them both on the field.
Well, the thing about Fuller is that Fuller, it seems to me, they trust him the most with pass protection. And I think that's the one part of his game that, to me, translates the best and translates the easiest to an offensive continuity. You don't want to necessarily tip your hand, though, when you put a guy like Feaster or Etienne in the game, because when you have that and when you see the ability that they bring running the football, you cannot lose that ability to pass protect when you have to go back and pass in a 3rd and long and they're on the field.
Yeah, that's the key thing there. And of course, we'll see how that pans out. But I just have to say, whether Feaster he's going to be on the field. And I just like him at a slot receiver if he's not going to play.
But here's the thing. You have a very crowded, comparatively where the running backs are, the wide receiver room is very crowded. You have to find snaps for Deion Kane, Hunter Renfrow, Ray McLeod if he's going to stay on the offensive side of the football. That might be part of the reason in finding out why he is taking more snaps also with the defensive side of the football. But, they're not exactly hard on finding receivers. They got plenty of receivers even after they lost Mike Williams. We'll take a break. We'll come back. 800-956-7266. We'll get back to Corn at the Citadel as well. And you're not going to want to miss what Sky Moore had to say about how difficult it was to watch last year from the sideline as we continue on Sports Talk.
I remember just the number 10, but the other place, working. I remember just the number 10, but all I remember is that number 10.
Welcome back in on Sports Talk South Carolina. Willie P. in the house, along with Professor Tom Hayes. Phil Kornblut is at the Citadel Golf outing in Charleston. Be sure to dial us up, 800-956-7266. Your thoughts on South Carolina, Clemson, and the like. Couple of basketball notes to pass along before we get into the meat of the issue involving the football. We do want to at least pass along that the folks at Clemson, at least on the basketball side, in the traveling party in Barcelona are okay. If you've been watching the news at all today, you will know that there was a very unfortunate incident that took place involving a terrorist attack there where at least a dozen people are dead and dozens more injured. Clemson had a scheduled game tonight, their final exhibition tilt in Spain as part of their 10-day exhibition tour over there. They're not the only ones who are over there in Barcelona and in Spain. Oregon State and Arizona also had exhibition tours throughout the country as well. Tulane is also there. Everyone from all the programs seemed to be okay, and Clemson put out a statement saying that everybody in the traveling party is safe. They were not near where the incident occurred, and that their travel plans will go on as scheduled. They will leave tomorrow morning and fly back here to South Carolina. So very, very happy that they are okay, but certainly our thoughts and prayers out to those who have suffered the loss of life in Barcelona on that senseless terrorist attack that took place there. Also want to at least pass along a developing story involving a very prominent name in the South Carolina basketball community. B.J. Mackey could be leaving the folks at Charleston Southern and going out to East Tennessee State to take an assistant job there. Multiple media outlets are reporting that, and so we want to at least pass that along. That is in the works. Once we get an official confirmation, we will bring that along to you here on Sports Talk South Carolina. Like an 800-956-7266 is the phone number. You had something you wanted to add?
No, I was saying our buddy Captain Kerry Rich has been, who's a former point guard at South Carolina himself. He was tweeting that out this afternoon that BJ is on the move.
It's interesting. Anytime it's weird that the assistant coach movement train is always kind of a very fascinating one, especially when you think about the fact that a lot of those guys' contracts are on year-to-year deals. So if you see a lot of movement, it's because, you're wondering about the job security of those who are in those head jobs, and also them trying to maybe move up from being a third assistant one place to a second assistant another. There's certainly a lot of movement as far as that goes, but certainly if BJ is on the move, we want to wish him the very best at East Tennessee State if that does happen. South Carolina practice today. They have one more tomorrow before their next scrimmage action at Williams-Brice Stadium. Remember, also Monday night, 7:30, the practice will be open to the public. Everybody will be able to come out and watch the Gamecocks for their only open practice of the fall at Williams-Brice Stadium. Again, that's 7:30 on Eclipse Monday. So blind yourself and then maybe have your eyes open by the South Carolina offense and defense when they take the field at Willie B for the first time in front of eyes that are not theirs. But the one guy who I think everybody is most willing and most wanting to see is that number 10, Sky Moore. Missed all of last year with a neck injury. And this is a guy who, if you are a team in the SEC East, you had nightmares about this guy going all the way back to his freshman year. He was missing in action last year and talked about how difficult it was to watch that entire year from the sideline.
It was difficult. I mean, just watching your friends, your teammates running around there doing what they love. I love the game, so it was difficult. But I tried my best, just to motivate them and get them through. So, but I'm happy to be back for sure.
How much are you noticing? Kind of the calendar click down, the days click down, they get less and less.
No, yeah, I'm noticing for sure. I mean, it's coming up quick. September 2nd is not very far away, so it's coming up quick. So I'm excited.
How much better is this defense than the one you played on 2 years ago?
I mean, it's almost like night and day. I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of guys just running around. You see the speed of the defense increased a lot. Guys know what they're doing. We're all just playing on the same page, so it's going to be fun to watch.
Is there any part of your game where you feel you're limited?
Limited? I mean, not really. I feel like I'm pretty versatile. I can do pretty much whatever on the field, so I don't feel like I'm limited anywhere on the field, to be honest with you.
Who has looked good among the younger guys playing behind you three?
Damani Stanley, Sherrod Green. Them two really, stood out for sure. They just have to really, learn the playbook more. But as far as football skills, they're not falling off at all. So they're really good players.
How close was the NFL last year? How close did it get to you declaring?
It was close. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was going through last year. It was a rough year. And that was like something on my mind that was like a positive, like after this year I might leave. But like I said, I talked to my family and support system and all that, and we just all decided it was the best decision to come back. But it was close.
What's the biggest thing you want to show to those who'll be looking for you next year that you couldn't show them before now?
I mean, there's been no fall off. I'm the same player, if not better, than the last time I stepped on the field for sure. So just to prove people that there's been no fall off from me.
How are you better?
Just the understanding of the game. Honestly, just this scheme I feel like is going to put me in position to make a lot of plays. I'm in space a lot, so I just feel like this scheme is going to expose my abilities, so I'll be able to make a lot more plays.
How much nerves are there in practice where you just sitting around like trying to take mental reps and kind of get up?
All being all year pretty much. That's all I could do was pretty much take mental reps, so that's all I was doing.
It's kind of like a secondary coach almost.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what it was. So yeah, I mean, that helped me boost up on my back. Helped me boost up to where I am now. So
what did you learn the most from that experience?
I guess just really just the scheme really, because it's a whole new scheme. John Hoke's scheme was completely different. So I was just really trying to learn the scheme and seeing where my help would be on certain plays and all that. So I picked up on that pretty quickly.
Those are the words of Sky Moore, who certainly, if you're looking at anything that happens with the Gamecock defense, it will run through him. And the fact of the matter is the depth behind him is not much, so he'll have to see the field and basically not leave it this year.
Well, to tell you about his instincts, he's got a chance to leave as the I guess the most interceptions in a career in South Carolina. That's something to say for a linebacker who'd be historically a historical leader in interceptions. The funny thing about him is South Carolina had recruited a top flight linebacker out of Virginia. Mm-hmm. And they thought they were set for that class under Spurrier. But then a guy named Will Muschamp, who was at Florida, flipped the Virginia guy. He went to Florida, and then in the last vestiges of the recruiting, South Carolina goes into Florida and gets a guy named Sky Moore that nobody had ever heard of. They've heard of him now.
They certainly have. And Corn, so one of the interesting things that was brought up, as we'll get to Mike Peterson in just a minute, is the fact that they've been running Bryson Williams in his normal or Bryson Allen Williams in his normal linebacker position, but they've also been running him some at Buck, rotating him with DJ Wanham. That's kind of a new development and a new wrinkle to that defense that's kind of revamped right now.
That's good. You want to have some flexibility. You want to be able to mix and match, considering various formations that you're going to see against offenses. So, and the other thing it does too, it makes offensive coordinators stay on edge, trying to guess where he's going to be. I mean, I would imagine that with South Carolina's defense, when you're an offensive coordinator game planning, you do a lot of game planning thinking about where Sky Moore is going to line up. How are they going to use Sky Moore? Kind of like they did with Clowney,
right?
And that crowd. So listen, if you're able to throw them off because of that, that's a bonus for you.
Well, the one thing that I'm curious about, Corn, and you can even speak more to this, is just how much will they be able to get pressure without having to blitz a fifth or sixth guy? Because that defensive line, as we know, has a lot of senior leadership, but still has not a lot of proven leadership and proven game experience yet.
Well, I mean, that's the million-dollar question for USC this year, is how improved is the pass rush going to be? Will they be able to create a pass rush without blitzing? That's a blessing for any defense if you're able to do that. They couldn't get a pass rush last year if they rushed all 11 and left nobody back in coverage. It was just that poor, with the exception of Darius English, who alone had over 8 sacks, which was a huge surprise anyway because he hadn't really showed that ability up to that point. So are they going to be better at that up front? I don't think we'll know until that opening game. Everything right now is conjecture.
You've heard the name Sky Moore. You've heard the name Bryson Allen Williams. There are some names you might not know or might not have heard of that could be key contributors to the linebacking core this year. Who are those names? We'll ask the man who coaches the outside linebackers, Mike Peterson, next as you're listening to Sports Talk South Carolina.
I hate to drop here because it's been good, but I'm
what I see now, I'm in love with.
Bryson Allen Williams a buck or a linebacker at this point?
So I'm coaching him a lot, and I'm excited about it.
Mike, how concerned are you with the depth at the linebacker position?
Well, it's concerning, but the thing is, you gotta, you get those young love with.
Bryson Allen Williams a buck or a linebacker?
We call it.
Hayes, hope you're doing yourself a solid by listening to Sports Talk South Carolina. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. We'll be back out the Citadel, of course, to rejoin Corn in just a moment. We wanted to at least get you before we turn to our friend Mike Morgan with SEC Network. The comments of outside linebackers coach Mike Peterson on the potential change of Bryce Now Williams' job description.
I'm calling him a buck, but he's a ball player. He's with the buck position, so I'm coaching him a lot, and I'm excited about it.
Mike, how concerned are you with the depth at the linebacker position?
Well, it's concerning, but the thing is, you gotta, you get those young guys and you gotta bring them along fast. That's college ball. The bad side about it is no free agency in this thing. We can't hit the waiver wire and go find another one. You got to play the hand you dealt. And that's where we at with it.
How necessary is it for you guys to get the pressure with 4 and so you don't have to blitz the linebackers as much?
Man, pressure cures everything. You can get after the quarterback. I tell T-Rod, we're going to make him look really, really good. You get pressure, you make the linebackers look good. So, the game of football is, I don't care how you draw it up, it's always started at the line of scrimmage.
Interestingly enough, the way that the depth problems, or at least depth issues for South Carolina are at linebacker can translate to the entire defense, Corn.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And I think that I think Peterson's done a heck of a job now going into year 2 with his position at South Carolina. I've heard nothing but good things about the way he has worked with his players and developed his players. And I look for those guys to be even better this year. Bryson Allen Williams has a chance to have an all-SEC kind of year. So does Sky Moore. You got guys on defense now, which they haven't had in a couple of years, who stand to earn some postseason recognition, and some guys on offense. So what it tells you is the South Carolina team is improving, getting better players, and these guys are playing at a very good level. Now here in Charleston, we're at Patriot Point. We were here for the 19th annual Citadel Kickoff Golf Tournament, which I know my team finished very, very high in the standings. I don't know that we won anything, but I think we finished very high using the modified Stableford scoring system that I like to go by these days. A lot of fun here, as always. They've got the Bulldog Boil coming up here in a little bit. Coach Brent Thompson is here. We're going to hear from him after the top of the hour, find out how practice has gone for the Bulldogs. But right now we welcome in our good friend for his edition of Morgan on the Move. It is indeed Mike Morgan. Is brought to you by Play It Again Sports in Columbia, where you can buy, sell, and trade what you want, and buy Founders Federal Credit Union. Check out foundersfcu.com and learn how they can assist you with all of your financial needs. Let's talk Clemson first, Mike. And Kelly Bryant, are you at all surprised that he is emerging as the guy at quarterback for the Tigers, at least here at the start of the season?
I wouldn't say surprised. I viewed it as a big question mark going in. I don't think there was an heir apparent to Deshaun Watson. I think there's a lot of schools that had a guy that had a lot of reps the year before, even if he wasn't the number one. We've seen that with some schools in the SEC as well as the ACC. Obviously, Clemson was not one of those. Deshaun Watson was a true franchise quarterback for the last couple of years. So you probably had your fingerprints on it closer than me, following recruiting the way you do. But you could have pulled either name out of there, and I don't think I would have been shocked.
Mike, would you say that is concern number one for Clemson, or is there one that probably ranks higher than that?
I don't think you could put anything higher than that one, because it wasn't just that Deshaun Watson was good, but so much of the offense ran through him. Now, look, they have proven they can do it without other guys. Taj Boyd was a guy who had a cup of coffee on an NFL roster, but wasn't a true NFL quarterback, but he was a heck of a college quarterback. So you don't have to have a first-round draft pick type player to do well in Clemson's offenses over the year. I know they've had a couple of different coordinators, but for the most part, you know, what they do is similar to what a lot of programs are doing today. You know, it is a lot of RPO. It is a lot of let your quarterback kind of ad-lib plays. Don't do the playbook and have an athletic quarterback that can make plays with his feet as well as his arm. I don't think that has changed much. But to me, Deshaun Watson was that special type of player that only comes around once every 10, 20 years, even for really good programs. I just think in addition to being incredibly physically talented, I think he had all those X factors that you love to have in a big-time quarterback.
Interestingly enough, Mike, we had just heard from Mike Peterson, the outside linebacker coach for South Carolina. The depth is definitely concerning for him, not only at the linebacker position, but on the entire defense. How concerned are you that South Carolina not only will have depth issues, but needs to get sustained pressure on the quarterback to have any modicum of success in 2017?
I think that's concern number one. Look, I think South Carolina's going to score points. I like what they have with Bentley at quarterback. I like what they have in a playmaking running back, receiver, tight end. I like all those things. I think they will score points this year, much more so than they have the last couple. But defensively, look, they're still paying the price for the lackluster recruiting towards the end of the Spurrier era. And that's not something that was going to be made up for in one or two recruiting classes. I think for Will Muschamp, that might still be a work in progress. So they might have to win some shootouts this year.
You know, the interesting thing, Mike, we were talking about Deshaun Watson and how vaunted that Clemson defense is, but I thought Watson actually played defense as well, because when he was on that field, they could score from anywhere, and their defense rarely had to play from behind. And you know how a defense can dictate things by shifting and everything and take gambles because they've got the lead. As far as the leagues are concerned, when you look at the ACC and SEC, I thought that's why at least last year the ACC at the top level teams were superior, because they had the superior quarterbacking. Do you see the SEC now taking a step with with the growing pains of some of the young guys they had to play last year?
There's no question. I've been on record, and I actually thought this going into last year, just looking at the rosters, and it kind of bared out to be true. I thought last year was one of the worst years for quarterbacking in the SEC that I've seen in a long, long time. That's the bad news. The good news is it's going to flip dramatically this year. I mean, I think quarterback can actually be a strength in this league this season, because so many of those guys that weren't real ready to take over the reins are now. And then, of course, you had a guy that was the surprise of the league in Sims at Alabama as a true freshman. Jalen Hurts as a true freshman who was terrific. Shea Patterson was a very pleasant surprise, his freakish athletic ability, even though Ole Miss, I mean, they're going to have a lot of issues on and off the field, but he's certainly a bright spot. I think Jacob Eason's going to be dramatically improved, and they don't have to rely on him to throw it 40 times a game to win in Athens, because they have such a good stable of running backs. Their question will be offensive line. I like what Kentucky has at quarterback. Florida, if they figure it out, I would have liked to see Felipe Franks take over that job. If he doesn't wind up winning the job, that says to me that Franks wasn't ready. But I just think overall quarterbacking play will be better this year in a league where it was at maybe not an all-time low, but certainly one of the lowest points it's been in a long time. I didn't even mention Fitzgerald at Mississippi State, who was a special kind of athlete as well.
Got about a minute left, Mike. How do the suspensions at Florida affect them week one against Michigan?
Well, I think the only one that's maybe not the only one, but by far and away the biggest one is Callaway, because he's their game-breaking wide receiver, and unfortunately he's had a penchant for being a knucklehead since he's arrived on campus over there. You know, is he going to be the difference between winning and losing? Maybe, maybe not, but it's certainly a big blow to an offense that has already struggled to score points for a number of years in Gainesville. So the question for me would be, is he going to clean his act up? Is this going to be a one-game thing, or is this going to be the end of his career? Or is it going to be somewhere in between? But I don't know if they have a ton of players like him. 5-10 years ago, when it was Urban Meyer or when it was Spurrier way back when, they probably would have ran him off by now and had 3 other guys like him to make plays. But they don't have that luxury in Gainesville. They certainly haven't had it at the quarterback spot. And what's really been even more surprising to me is they haven't had more game-breaking wide receivers.
SEC Network's Mike Morgan, thanks so much.
Okay, guys.
We'll talk to Mike next week, as we always do. We'll come back. We'll do recruiting and more when we return. Sports Talk, South Carolina.
I think you got to give the ACC credit. Last year, I've sort of looked forward to, I'm on radio 3 hours a week. Probably were better. But maybe this year SEC will get back to being the best. But for 1 year,
Seven on a Thursday. Will Pelagic, Phil Kornblut, Tom Hayes. This is Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. I want to stop down on something that you asked Mike Morgan, Pro, because it was very interesting to kind of hear Mike talk about the difference between the conferences and how down he was on the SEC and its quarterback play going into the 2016 season. This was Steve Spurrier yesterday on what we heard about not only the two conferences, but how the ACC kind of passed the SEC by, having won the championship last year.
I think you got to give the ACC credit. Last year, they probably were better. But maybe this year, SEC will get back to being the best. But for 1 year, yeah, they were very good. There's no question about it. And then, of course, Clemson won the national championship. They've been in that Final Four both years, final game both years. They've done extremely well. But I think over the last 10 years or so, the SEC still is going to be the best. But give ACC credit.
That's Steve Spurrier from yesterday on ESPN. I still feel that the SEC is ahead of the ACC, Pro. Your thoughts?
As far as, the intangibles, the reputation of the league, the lines of scrimmage, if anything that's dominating the SEC is the talent they have in the defensive front fours. Basically, that's where you see it, because that seems to be the hardest thing to recruit, especially ready-made tackles. But you look at, the talent, especially in that SEC West that's been dominant. That's why the SEC East has to crank it up this year. But I've always thought about, the big state schools in the SEC, and then you got Vandy, whereas you have several more private schools in the ACC.
Yeah, the only two schools I think that would have a snowball's chance and heck to compete in the SEC West if they had to are Clemson and Florida State, maybe Louisville, maybe, but I don't know about on a year-to-year basis. Corn, in my mind, I still think the SEC is ahead of the ACC, despite what Clemson did last year.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a never-ending argument. The ACC has come up a long, long way.
Of course.
And I think the SEC has slipped in some ways. Ole Miss's program is going to be down for a while. For one, South Carolina's been down for another. Missouri has been down. Vandy is still Vandy. So I mean, there's some weak spots along the road of the SEC, which is covered up by the decades-old reputation of the league. The ACC has come up in many markets, especially with the addition of Louisville to the scene. And then, of course, going back to Florida State, of course, you've got Clemson's run of dominance here of late, the addition of Miami, which is on the rebound. North Carolina's been pretty competitive, pretty solid. Virginia Tech, of course, when joining the league was another big addition. The ACC just has to fight that reputation for being a great basketball conference, which indeed it is. There's no question it's the best basketball conference in the country, but it's a much improved football conference as well, and can really season bowl games. It holds its own head-to-head with the SEC pretty well now here on an annual basis.
I don't think it's – again, I don't want to discredit what the ACC has done, and I know that the steps have grown leaps and bounds. That's the one thing that I will acknowledge. But in my mind, I need to see more than a one-year championship from Clemson in order to prove that maybe this conference has jumped over, and maybe we need to see some more head-to-head victories inside conference, because it seems like a lot of these head-to-head matchups seem heavily skewed at their better ACC teams taking on more of the paltry SEC teams.
But, the interesting thing about it is I think Florida State has won 4 in a row against Florida, and Georgia Tech has beaten Georgia 2 times in a row. But the interesting thing is, as soon as we say that, then in Kentucky upsets a Louisville last year. So it's interesting. But I think it's good fodder, and I think it's great that all those matchups we have, ACC, SEC matchups with teams in state, come at the end of the year.
Interestingly enough, and again, this will be something that we fight tooth and nail for over the entirety of not only this year but years to come. I think the one way that we find this out is if we see these games like we'll see in week 1 between Alabama and Florida State. We see these teams play each other. Now, whether a neutral site contest in Atlanta will tell the story of the entirety of how we define success between these two conferences remains to be seen, but there's still a lot to decipher with those things. 800-956-7266. We head to Corn for a little recruiting news.
Yeah, see, now I'm going to test you. Now, what did I tell you day one is the key to remembering the phone number.
956, and then the 2 Richard Perry numbers, the pro number and the college number.
You mean William Perry?
Yes, the fridge.
Refrigerator Perry.
Yeah. I thought you said, did you say Richard Perry or William Perry?
William Perry. Richard. I said refrigerator Perry. Refrigerator Perry. Fridge. The
All
fridge.
right, very good. You passed the test.
I'm there.
Just was checking.
Fridge.
Okay.
The fridge.
Quickly, let me give you recruiting before we hit the break here at the top of the hour. Clemson remains in hot pursuit of safety Quindarius Monday of Atlanta. Now, he's an Auburn commitment. Clemson thought it was in really good shape with him back in the summer.
I think you can pick up where Corn left off, Jarmar.
Because we know the real brain trust around here is Jarmart. You know, I just give Phil all these recruiting tidbits, and he doesn't do any of the work. Definitely doesn't call people day and night to get it. But we were talking about the Georgia commit Zamir White of Laurinburg, North Carolina. And the Tigers, like Corn said, had focused a lot of their energy on their running back spot on White. And they didn't move on to other candidates until White picked up on the Bulldogs. That put them behind the 8 ball with the likes of Ohio State commitment Master Teague III, as well as Tennessee commitment Lynn J. Dixon. Neither has indicated the late offer that Clemson will send them. Clemson also offered Asa Martin of Decatur, Alabama. He's uncommitted, but Clemson does have a shot with that one. And this is his words. They came in kind of late. It was my last offer, Martin said of Clemson. I've been hearing from them ever since they started recruiting me as much or as more as other schools recruiting me. They know they've got 4 running backs on their roster right now, and they've got a history of guys sending them into the league. They've actually sent, we're waiting to see Wayne Gallman out with the Giants right now.
True.
But I mean, we'll hear later on in the show about the clogged up running back bottle.
It's a lot.
Clemson.
It's a lot of that going on right now, especially the fact that those guys, none of them are seniors.
Now, quickly here, we've got offensive lineman Jerome Carvin of Cordova, Tennessee. He's delayed his commitment announcement, which he was scheduled for today. Carvin said he'll take his official visits before he makes his decision. We've got USC target Raekwon O'Neal of Conway. He's going to announce his college decision today. We're keeping an eye on it. O'Neal has known his decision earlier this month. He had USC, Maryland, and Rutgers.
That was the guy who went to Rutgers. That's the guy we found out last night.
Yeah, he went to Rutgers. So that's an old one.
That's an old report.
Another player, we've got lanebacker Rosendo Louie of Deerfield Beach, Florida. He's committed to Florida State. Wide receiver Josh Vann of Tucker, Georgia said Tuesday night nothing has changed for him. USC is still his favorite over Georgia. And he's got an announcement coming either Saturday or Monday. Clemson 2019 wide receiver Ramel Keaton of Marietta, Georgia. USC has him among his offers, including Louisville, Oregon, Miami, and Mississippi State, North Carolina, Auburn, and Georgia. Then USC basketball coach Frank Martin has added another graduate transfer student for his season's roster. According to reports from ESPN, 6'2" Wesley Myers will join the Gamecocks for his final season after graduating from Maine.
And Myers, that addition we told you about a little bit yesterday, the fact that his addition comes on the heels of the news we found out yesterday about Rakeem Felder having been indefinitely suspended by head coach Frank Martin. Although Myers didn't exactly have the best run at it at Maine, he left there because he broke a teammate's jaw in a locker room fight. So,
that gives the Gamecocks 7 new players for this year, and that's the maximum 13 on the roster. So they're locked and loaded.
It's going to be interesting to see. Again, we've talked about it yesterday.
Well, actually, with the suspension of the guard yesterday, they have 12 on the roster because his scholarship has just been held up. But, the interesting thing is these young guys, a commitment, I don't know what it is, because to me in college football, a commitment only means the other schools after the guy knows who the enemy is.
Exactly. Brent Thompson of the Citadel head coach will join us after the top. Hour 2 next. Sports Talk, South Carolina.
You know, physically he looks like Wayne. He has that number 9, and
It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth and Will Pelagic. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Second hour of Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Will Pelagic, Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes, Jared Rogers-Martin producing and doing a flawless job of doing so. Hope you're enjoying your Thursday evening. Feel free to join us, 800-956-7266. That's the phone number, your two-way Sports Talk telephone number in the Palmetto State. We're talking Clemson. We're talking South Carolina. And I know that our first hour was very Gamecock heavy, but I'm telling you, we have a full orange hour, if you will. We are going to hear from both of the offensive coordinators for the Clemson Tigers and also from Deshaun Watson following the joint practices that they had with the New England Patriots. But first off, we'll head down to Charleston and join Phil Kornbluth where he is hanging with the Citadel. We'll do that here in just a moment. But first off, interestingly enough, so much has been said about the Clemson Tigers quarterback position and how much of their success will run through how the heir apparent to Deshaun Watson will acclimate to that position, whether it's Kelly Bryant, whether it's Zarek Cooper down the road, or even Hunter Johnson, depending on whether or not Bryant is able to hold that position. We heard Dabo Swinney say yesterday, not only after practice, but on ESPN, by hook or crook, barring something crazy and him taking a significant step backwards, Kelly Bryant is our starting quarterback week 1 when they take the field against Kent State. Now, among those who will be around him, there is at least a little bit more to kind of bite off there when it comes to the running back position. There's been a battle between both Tavian Feaster and C.J. Fuller. Adam Choice was getting a lot of run as well as a redshirt junior. But Travis Etienne was the name that really emerged Wednesday after the situational scrimmage that took place on Clemson's campus on Wednesday. And we had some interesting comments that came from Tony Elliott, co-offensive coordinator, comparing the man who wears number 9 now to the man who wore number 9 last year.
You know, physically he looks like Wayne. He has that number 9, and if you were here when Wayne was a young guy, Wayne was all over the place. I mean, he was violent, he was fast, and he was running hard, and over time he was able to refine his style. Their styles are different now. Wayne was a downhill, powerful guy. He could get to the second level, but he just didn't have that third level home run ability. Travis has that all, and he's very, very natural. I'd say that right now at this stage of his career, his eyes are better than Wayne's were when he was a freshman. I mean, he just sees it. I mean, he sees the cutback. He sees the field, and that's just something that you can't teach. So I'd say he's a more natural runner, and they look a lot alike because they're still a little bit clumsy because it's new to them, and now they're up here with the big guys. Everything's moving faster, but I'm very, very pleased with where he's at as a runner.
You said Travis wasn't he's working number 2s and all, but who's working number 1s, and where are y'all at with those other 3 guys? So
you got Taven right now, and Fuller have been working mostly with the 1s because Choice has been out for the last couple of days, so he hasn't had any reps. And I'll sneak Travis in there every once in a while with the first group just to see him run behind that first unit. But we feel so good about our offensive line that we don't feel like there's much of a drop off. So I wanted to challenge him to work there, and right now I'd say Fuller's had a very, very steady camp. Nothing flashy, but he's the most dependable. He's the most dependable in pass protection. He comes to work every single day, and he's made the plays that are there. The difference with Travis and what Travis has been able to do over the rest of those guys is he's been able to find some home runs. And again, sometimes that's due to opportunity. He may be getting the right call at the right time, but right now I'd say you have Fuller run up there number 1. You got Taven with a close number 2, and then Choice was having a very, very good camp, but he's missed the last week. So hopefully over this next scrimmage and today's practice, he'll be able to make up some ground. And then Travis is a guy that we know what he can do with his hands, with the ball in his hands in the field, but he's got to be able to function without the ball, and that's where he's got to grow up.
That's Clemson O coordinator Tony Elliott speaking after Clemson's Thursday practice. Those were the Tigers. Phil Kornbluth, you have some news about some Bulldogs.
Yes. We are down here in Charleston. We're at Patriots Point, We're here to help celebrate the 19th annual Brigadier Club Golf Outing, the Kickoff Classic for the Citadel. And, of course, they're here talking Citadel football. And we've got second-year head coach Brent Thompson here with us, who did not – I asked maybe the most stupid question I've ever asked today off air to a football coach, which was, did you play golf today, Coach? And your answer was?
No, I played football. I played football, Coach, and I don't know how well I played today, but I certainly did go out there and coach a little bit.
That was maybe the dumbest thing I've ever done during football season, to ask a football coach if you played golf. How are things? How are things coming along in practice?
They're coming along nicely right now. We had some really nice weather, so we were able to get a lot of things done early on. Now, the past about 3 or 4 days, we've dodged some thunderstorms here and there, but today we had to dodge the heat, so we got out there a little bit earlier and cut practice just a little bit short because it was fairly warm out there. And when you're 14, 15 days in like we are right now, it's a matter of really just trying to get through it, grind through these last couple of days. We scrimmage on Saturday. We're going to find out exactly where we are at, and then we'll start to back it down, and we'll be 2 weeks out from playing Newberry on September the 2nd on Saturday. So,
how do you look injury-wise at this point?
Surprisingly, we look fairly well. I think we do a good job of in-summer training, preparing us for camp, and then obviously we kind of really just build up in camp to everything that we're doing. We try not to attack things too fast in camp, so we try to keep as many injuries down as possible.
All right, so how do things look offensively? You've kind of picked right back up where you left off last season?
Yeah, we should pick back up a little bit. Offensive line, we've lost quite a few guys, which is a little bit of a concern. We're going to play some young guys on the offensive line. As of right now, we've got a sophomore, a junior, another junior, and 2 freshmen starting over there. So it's a little bit of a learning curve right now, is having just 2 true freshmen. They're just figuring out the game right now, and at the Citadel it can be challenging for them, both mentally and physically. So I think they're coming along nicely, though. We feel confident in our quarterback. He's been a 3-year starter for us. In that department, I think we feel pretty good. Wide receivers and running backs, I think we're pretty solid. So as long as we can progress that offensive line a little bit further each and every practice, I think we're going to be okay on offense.
I was going to say, it's got to give you some long, sleepless nights to know 2 true freshmen are going to be starting on your offensive line. That's something you really try to avoid, unless they're just really good players and they've beaten out everybody else.
I tell you what happened, Phil, is about 3 or 4 days into practice, when we started kind of getting into helmets and shoulder pads, we made a decision early on that we were just going to go with the younger guys. They gave us our best option for development. They're bigger guys. They've got great upside, and each day we saw them getting better and better and better. Now, eventually they did hit a wall, which it's bound to happen. So we made a move at about 5 or 6 days ago that I think is the one that's kind of stuck, and it's the one we're going to go with for now.
How about your defense?
I think they're solid. We don't have to count on probably one single freshman over there, although we do have some freshmen that'll probably be in the rotation. We've got a nice cornerback from the Rock Hill area who's doing a great job for us, Wally Wilmore. He's a freshman that I think could help us out and impact us on that side of the ball. And then there's one other defensive lineman that's in the rotation right now, Aaron Brawley, kind of a late signee for us, but really put on a lot of weight over the summertime. He's got a great attitude, and he's going to play some defensive end 5 technique.
Those are the words of Brent Thompson, the second-year head coach of the Citadel Bulldogs. Will Pelagic and Professor Tom Hayes back with you here on Main Street as we continue here on Sports Talk South Carolina. Some of the other news items we wanted to get you to today. The Clemson Tiger basketball team is safe following the unfortunate incident that took place in Barcelona earlier today. There was a terrorist attack that killed at least 13 and has injured dozens, many others. There are a couple of teams that are overseas right now on similar tours like Clemson's. They were supposed to play their final game of their 10-day exhibition trip. They were scheduled to play 4 games there. They will only play 3, as they will come back home tomorrow as originally scheduled, canceled the game tonight. But everybody is safe, thankfully, which is a good thing for the folks at Clemson. We're still working to officially confirm the B.J. Mackey news about him leaving the assistant basketball job at Charleston Southern for the new job at East Tennessee State as an assistant coach. But we've seen multiple media outlets corroborating that report, and that, of course, is something that we'll be looking forward to following over the next couple of days. Clemson practiced earlier today, as did USC. Clemson will be off off tomorrow. USC will practice tomorrow, although we will not talk to them until Saturday. Head coach Will Muschamp will join us following Saturday's closed scrimmage, and we'll also hear from the players from Clemson's side as well as Dabo Sweeney following their Saturday scrimmage at Death Valley. Feel free to join us, 800-956-7266. Your questions on the seasons for both Clemson and USC. When we come back, one of the more crowded rooms in Clemson's offensive side of the football is the wide receiver room. Despite the loss of Mike Williams, there's a lot left over in the cupboard. Jeff Scott will tell us what he has left when Kelly Bryant is throwing the football. Next on Sports Talk. .20 on a Thursday evening. 800-956-7266. Will Pelagic, Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes. Phil is in Charleston. We will continue to check in with him at the Citadel Golf Tournament. Some other things to at least bring you up to date on. Of course, UNC's Committee on Infractions hearing ending. They had about 15 hours of deliberation. UNC initially intended to issue a statement about the hearing, but then pulled back. It says they can't talk about the hearing or any of the facts and nothing to add at this time, which probably means that probably didn't go as expected.
Well, you know, they've been kind of beating their chest against the NCAA, got their attorneys involved and stretched this thing out so long. And they might have wanted to say something about it, but they thought they maybe want to pull back, Will, because they think the penalties may be harsh if they open their mouths too wide. You were mentioning about B.J. Mackey. WCIV TV4 in Charleston is now reporting that he's slated to move on from the Buccaneers of Charleston Southern to the Buccaneers of East Tennessee State. So Mackey has been at CSU since 2011 when he was promoted to associate head coach in 2015. Ironically, there's another Irmo graduate already on the East Tennessee staff in Brooks Savage on Steve Forbes' staff. So two former Irmo High School guys on one staff there at East Tennessee State.
Yeah, and back to the UNC thing, you know, at Corn, it's hard being in on this side of the Palmetto border to at least not be paying very close attention to what UNC could receive or should receive. In my mind, I thought that I'd be growing my first gray hair before we saw a ruling from the NCAA, but the actions that came from the Committee on Infractions at least signal to me that we could be close to something here within the next couple of months.
Yeah, well, you know, they had you might have mentioned this a moment ago, they had the hearings in Nashville over the last couple of days, and you know, this thing dragged out and dragged out and dragged out. They had 3 different notices of allegations in this case. Things kept changing, and North Carolina kept arguing this and saying the NCAA didn't have the authority here and the jurisdiction there, and that's their defense. Their defense is not that what they had from an academic standpoint was fraudulent. I think everybody's agreeing with that. They're just saying that this is not related to athletics. This is an academic issue, and thus the North Carolina Athletic Department and its teams and coaches and players should not be under scrutiny. It should not be penalized as a result of this.
Well, it's like saying, you know,
I think that I think any rational thinking person would say, "Are you kidding me?"
You're right.
I mean, you had hundreds of athletes go through these bogus classes and gained either gained some sort of eligibility, remained eligible, helped their GPA, whatever the case may be. They were taking fraudulent, bogus classes, and that, you know, it cuts right to the heart of the so-called student athlete. And if you're fraudulent academically and fraudulent as a student, then you've got no business being rewarded as an athlete.
And of course, part of their argument was it wasn't an extra benefit for the athlete because they had a lot of regular students taking those same bogus courses.
It seems like a real false equivalency on their part, and the fact of the matter is the NCAA, in my opinion, will have to show its muscle here, and if they don't, then, you know, I think you have to give up on them as an organization if you haven't already, Corn.
Yeah, it's they're under the spotlight here, and of course, Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, is the chairman of the infractions committee, and you know, people prior to this were saying, "Hey, how can they get a fair hearing when you got the SEC?" You know, all this sort of. The bottom line is that
they messed up.
The North Carolina has benefited athletically because of this arrangement, and somebody somewhere along the lines in Chapel Hill, and I've heard, you know, Roy Williams and all different Tar Heels come out and say, coaches can't be responsible for the academics, can't be responsible for what the players are taking in their courses, and we don't know anything about what's happening on the other side of campus. We're way over here. That's all an academic side of campus issue and not ours. But, you know, your players receive the benefits of bogus classes that in some form or fashion, I'm sure, help keep some of them eligible to play. At some point in time, that 3.0 you got, or that whatever grade point you got from those classes factored into your GPA, and perhaps help keep some people eligible when they otherwise would not have been.
It's a sad state of affairs right now, not only in the NCAA, but for North Carolina. And if they get one red cent below what I think they deserve, it would be an absolute shame. Closer to home, the Clemson Tigers on the practice field earlier today. We were speaking earlier about the running back core, but now we want to hear from the wide receivers, or at least about the wide receivers. You know, when you lose a guy like Mike Williams, it's obviously going to impact you adversely. But when you think about what they have coming back in the receiving core, and even you can throw in Jordan Leggett in that mix too, because he is NFL bound as well. I think if you lose two talents of that nature, Clemson is probably as well equipped to handle those departures as any team in the country is, because of what they have coming back this year at the receiver position.
What we talk about is if you can bring in guys that are talented, and guys that'll buy into the work ethic, being humble, hungry, hardworking. You get a talented guy that's willing to work, and that's how you get an elite player. And I think a lot of times the wide receiver position, guys come in, they're talented, and maybe they don't push themselves as hard, work on the details and all that. And that's something that our guys have really always taken pride in is the details. I look at Sammy Watkins coming as a true freshman. I mean, he would listen, very coachable. Even though he could probably go out there and do a lot of things on his own, the details were important for him. And that's really how he went from being a really good wideout to being a great wideout. And then the younger guys see that, and it kind of becomes the culture of your room. So that's something we're always reminding our guys is, hey, even though we've had these talented guys, they had talent coming in, they were willing to put in the work. And that's part of who we are and who this group has been, and we need to keep it that way.
How about a guy like Travion Thompson? He's kind of twirled in the shadows at this point. Is he the kind of guy that could come up and be like Dabo yesterday compared to Jerron Brown a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we appreciated Jerron as much when he was here as we do now that he's left and now getting ready to play maybe his 5th year. And the issue was he had Sammy on one side and DeAndre Hopkins on the other side that kind of overshadowed him. Now here he is playing for 5 years, and I really think that we've got that. I think we've got several guys in this group other than just our first 3 that are going to have a chance to play at the next level. And, one thing that we believe in is playing a lot of guys. And we're not just going to play a lot of guys to play a lot of guys. We're going to play as many guys that deserve to play. But, we want to do that. And so our guys know that. So that's why they don't get discouraged if they're not the starter. They know as long as they work hard, and earn the opportunity to play, that they're going to have a chance to play 30 or 40 snaps.
Well, obviously you got a new trigger man, but the interesting thing is Clemson can take solace in they've already been to the championship game without Mike Williams when he had that unfortunate neck injury.
Right.
They went all the way to the title game that they lost that year to Alabama to come back the next year with Mike Williams and win it. The key point is we talk about the wide receivers. I think Kane is going to lead things off. Of course, you got Renfro, who finds those spots in the defense, always seems to be open. The interesting thing is the development of a new tight end, because I thought really when number 4 got into trouble and maybe the coverages were good, his Linus Blanket and Jordan Leggett was always there at tight end. Be interesting to see how the tight end position develops as well with this Clemson team.
Should be interesting with that, and maybe you want to think about taking somebody off of that wide receiving core, maybe moving them inside attached. There are obviously some different options there, but Corn, I look at this room and I'm very, very encouraged with what I see.
Well, yeah, I think you should be, because one thing Clemson has done well is stockpile talents, and their belief is next man up, whether it's because of departure or injury, and they feel like in their wide receiver room they've got talent. Deion Kane, proven big play potential down the field. Of course, we all know what Hunter Renfro is. He's that security blanket, and Ray McCloud stands to have a breakout year. Then you factor in Cornell Powell and Travion Thompson and DeAndre Overton and T. Higgins and T.J. Chase and Amari Rodgers. You got 9 guys right there who can all go and catch it.
Deshaun Watson comes your way next on Sports Talk.
It's always good to be able to learn and watch a guy like Tom Brady.
Hundred 956-7266 is the phone number. What do you think is a reasonable prediction for both the Tigers and Gamecocks? We're getting closer and closer, down to 16 days for both getting themselves ready. Although the high school football season is about to begin with week 0, or what we're calling week 1, across the state of South Carolina, and a very interesting debut. First game as a head coach at Heathwood Hall for a South Carolina football legend, Marcus Lattimore, giving his first pregame speech. It was on the state website. And I tell you what, Corn, this is a guy who I think many across the state are looking to see how he performs in this, his first test as a coach right now. We had Corn. I think one of the things Marcus Lattimore. The one thing in listening to him when he was a player, he had that headstrong ability to be able to understand the game, and you don't always see that from a running back.
Yeah, the key point is he played in that diversified offense in high school under Bobby Bentley, who's now the running back coach at USC, and of course his son is the quarterback.
Right.
But the one thing that got to me about Lattimore is the fact that when he played at South Carolina and was healthy, not only was he a strong runner, Will, but you could tell when his quarterback got in trouble, he knew how to peel back and either throw a block or make himself available as an outlet receiver. That was incredible, the way he saw the game through a running back's eyes, but also knew when his quarterback needed his help.
And Heathwood Hall taking on Oakbrook Prep in this game on Thursday night. I know Latta plays Lakeview tonight as well, Corn. So I'm sure you'll have your you'll have your eyes at least peeled on that game. But I'm very curious to see how Marcus goes, because it's interesting how a lot of the hierarchies go in coaching. Sometimes guys try to latch on at their alma mater as a manager, or they try to be a graduate assistant, maybe try to work it up as a position coach. In my opinion, I want to see a guy who's done the job before. I want to see a guy do what Marcus Lattimore is doing. I want to see him be a head coach either at the high school level or the small college level before I see them usurp themselves into a bigger job.
Well, the interesting thing about guys like Lattimore, and I don't think Lattimore is that type of guy, but we've seen a lot, especially when you look at the pro level, some guys who go into coaching and were tremendous athletes.
Yes.
They somehow think that everybody's supposed to do what they do. And wait a minute, now you're exceptional.
Right.
But I think Lattimore is the type of guy that has the patience to look at a guy and say, well, this guy's not developed. I need to teach him slowly. I think he's got that kind of patience.
That's the one thing they always said about Joe Montana, because of the fact that he had such innate ability and vision. Even Peyton Manning gets similar comparisons. The fact that those guys had such otherworldly ability that turned them basically off to coaching and turned them away from coaching, because they would get overtly frustrated that a player wouldn't see something like they would. And that's certainly something that, in my mind, would be very interesting to at least look at. And Corn, we were just talking about Marcus Lattimore's first game here as a head coach as Heathwood Hall gets ready to take on Oakbrook Prep. The ability that he brings and his aptitude to the game was very evident when we heard him speak at South Carolina, and we're going to see it personified here for the first time tonight on a Thursday Week 1 contest.
Yeah, that game's already underway, and we'll get you an update on that game. There's a few games being played around the state tonight, and, of course, a full slate of games tomorrow night. And that reminds me to remind everybody about our high school scoreboard shows that begin tomorrow night with reports at 10, 10:30, and 11. But back to Marcus Lattimore, I mean, come on, if you can't learn football from Marcus Lattimore, and if you can't learn some off-the-field things from Marcus Lattimore, then who else can you learn from, I know this is an exciting time for him as well, and it's also it falls in line with everything he's done since he retired from professional football, and that is to give back to the game. And the best way you give back to the game is you work with the young kids and you teach them the sport. You teach them how to play it the right way. Checking here some tweets, and it looks like Heathwood Hall is up at least 7-0 in the first quarter of that game against Oakbrook. Oakbrook, which is that out of Spartanburg? I think it's out of Spartanburg.
Oakbrook Prep, yes.
Yeah. So, I think he's going to do just a fine job there at Heathwood. I mean, let's face it, it's a private school, and students come and go. You pick up players from other schools for various reasons, and he'll develop players as well within his program. So I think he's going to do an excellent job there. While I've got a moment, the recruiting report that I forwarded to Jarmart earlier that he was reciting while my line was down was actually from yesterday. I think you guys caught that. So if I may, I'd like to go ahead and recite tonight's updated recruiting information.
All yours.
Thank you. So as I was saying earlier, Quindarius Monday of Atlanta, an Auburn commitment, but Clemson is staying on him very, very strongly. And they're trying to to peel him away from Auburn. He does say he's still committed to the Tigers of Auburn. He is coming in, he thinks, for Clemson's opening game against Kent State, both to see the Tigers and visit with them, and also he has a cousin who plays in the secondary for Kent State. Georgia is also still working him and trying to turn him. So right now it's Clemson, Auburn, Georgia. Auburn still in the driver's seat with the commitment, but he is going to take a look at Clemson once again early in the season. USC signee offensive lineman Jordan Carty was cleared by University admissions and will arrive on campus soon, according to Gamecock Central. USC target offensive lineman Dylan Wanham from Tucker, Georgia, told the Auburn Reporter for SEC Country that he currently favors Auburn over USC. Plans to visit both again during the season. Of course, his brother is USC defensive end DJ Wanham. He also cited Georgia, Tennessee, Florida State, and LSU as schools on his list. He won't make a decision until December. Basketball, 6'7" Jimmy Nichols Jr. from Conway on the fast track toward a decision which should come in the middle of September. He's got it down to 3 schools, as you know, and he has set the official visits for those 3. All of the visits are coming the first 3 weekends of September. He goes first to Providence, then to USC, and finally to Miami. The decision will come from one of those. USC has not officially offered him, but he talked to Frank Martin on Tuesday night, and Martin told him he will get his offer on his official visit. And all the schools are pretty even right now. He averaged 16 points and 10 rebounds per game last season. And 6'5" Aaron Neesmith from Porter Gap told Gator Country that the official visit he plans to take to Florida will be on August 25th. He's already taken an official to Vanderbilt. The other schools he's considering are USC, Georgetown, Virginia Tech, Harvard, and Yale. So there you go for the recruiting information that we have for you from today, along with a refresher. If you missed last night's recruiting report, you got a bonus from Jarmart. He gave you a refresher on what we did last night.
You have any insight on the Lakeview Ladder contest going on tonight, Corn?
Well, I imagine it's a bloodbath. It usually is when these two intra-county schools get together. You being new to the state, let me explain something to you about Dillon County.
Yes.
Willie P. There's 3 municipalities in Dillon County. You have Dillon, which is the armpit. You have Lakeview, which is the sewer. And then you have Latta, which is the garden spot. So I would expect that Latta is going to do its thing tonight and open up the season with a very one-sided victory.
Why doesn't it shock me that you said you come from the garden spot? Why doesn't it shock me?
Latta is a beautiful spot on this planet that has produced great people in this world. We've got an NBA player. We've got a starting offensive lineman at South Carolina. We got some very important people out in the world.
I could say something really, really bad right now, but I'm not going to.
Didn't you also have a director of Office of Management and Budget?
No. You talking about Ben Bernanke?
Mm-hmm.
No, he's from Dillon.
Oh, he's from
the armpit. He's from the armpit.
He's from the armpit. Yeah,
that's a rich armpit.
We promised you Deshaun Watson. We'll get to him after the break. He'll talk about what it was like to meet Tom Brady, and we'll close up shop for a Thursday on Sports Talk South Carolina. 7:48. It is Sports Talk South Carolina, 800-956-7266. If there are any stragglers out there who still wanted to get in, we will entertain that for the next, about 9 minutes. I know you wanted to update the ladder score. Looks like your boys are on the board there, Corn.
Early touchdown pass, and the mighty Vikings up 7-0 over the hated, despised Fighting Gators of Lakeview. But a long way to go. I'm not sure if they're playing this in the Death Dome in Latta or where they're playing it at. If it's a home game or not.
Do you know where your Letterman jacket is hanging right now?
Absolutely, in my closet, in my house. Absolutely.
Was it made out of? Was it made out of straw?
I wear it regularly. Don't you wear yours? I wear it regularly.
No, I stopped wearing my Letterman jacket from Northern Virginia when I graduated high school. I gave it to my sister, and she wears it now.
You don't know what you're missing, and I have all my little stars and everything on there. Oh yeah, very
well. I also did move to Texas, where a Letterman jacket is rather useless about 10 months out of the year.
Yeah. Hey, there's a couple of NASCAR things I wanted to mention. First of all, from Darlington, we did not mention this last night, and that is that Darlington is going to celebrate the legacy of Dale Earnhardt Sr. and honor Dale Jr. in his final NASCAR Cup start at Darlington. Is dedicating the Turn 3 Suite Towers in their names respectively.
Very nice.
Earnhardt Towers will feature an assortment of graphics that depict memorable moments of Senior and Junior featured on the backside of each tower. So that's very, very nice that Darlington is doing that. And then, further sign, what is it in Sports Illustrated, the sign of the apocalypse?
Apocalypse?
Yes, the sign of the apocalypse, yes.
Yeah. Well, NASCAR announced now that starting with the playoffs this season, they're going to live stream an in-car camera on Twitter for each race, beginning with Chicagoland.
One car on Twitter?
I'm going to tell you, will provide fans a look from inside the car with a live camera stream that can be accessed via the official Twitter handle from NASCAR. Of course, NBC will have the full race. It's pretty cool, though. I mean, I'm not making fun of this. This will be, the thing that got NASCAR hot.
Do they specify which car it is, Corn, or is it like a different car every week?
They have not specified which car. But, the thing that got NASCAR hot when it really took off in the 70s was the first time that CBS was doing all the televising, and they put a camera inside a car and showed that on television. Everybody went, wow, look at this. This is awesome. And then, of course, they started putting more and more cameras in there. Now you're going to have a live camera in a car that you can follow along with via Twitter.
The thing that I used to love with the surround sound that Fox still does is the crank it up thing, where they turn the announcer mics down and then they turn the crowd mics up, and you hear the real, the real shaking that you hear when you are at a speedway like that.
You know what it's like in person. You've been to Homeland Speedway.
Homestead,
and of course, you've got a chance to go to NASCAR this year. Go to Darlington if you choose. So there's nothing like being there. I mean, yeah, you can crank up your television all you want, but there's nothing like being there and hearing that rolling thunder of a pack of cars coming at you at 160 miles an hour or greater.
Well, why don't you confess and tell everybody you're addicted to smelling that rubber when you get close to the track.
Not quite.
I will not deny that the aroma of the garage area is very appealing to me.
It is. We did want to, at least before we get out of here, we brought you half the story on Deshaun Watson meeting Tom Brady yesterday at Patriots and Texans joint practices in West Virginia. The two teams will play each other in not only week 2 of the preseason, but also during the regular season. They had joint practices where the Texans actually had been headquartering their fall camp at the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia. So not only do they have those two practices, but they'll have a preseason game on Saturday. Tom Brady had very high praise for Deshaun Watson, and Watson appreciative of such praise.
It's always good to, be able to learn and watch a guy like Tom Brady, one of the best to ever do it, and see him in live practice and see how he works. But what we talked about was just kind of congratulating each other on all the success that we had, and just giving me a little tip here and there about this lead in this system and Coach OB. So it was a good talk.
What does it mean to get that kind of interaction from him?
Talk.
What does it mean to get that kind of? What does it mean to get that kind of interaction from him?
Oh.
What does it mean to get that kind of interaction from him?
It's cool. It's a blessing to be in his presence and have that opportunity to learn from one of the best that's done it for a long time. So it's always good to talk to him and be able to talk to him more down the road. Just how consistent he is, and how each and every play is a game rep. Each time he takes the field, he's out there taking charge, being a leader, and he's out there, being the man of the team and controlling everything.
Yesterday, Bill O'Brien said that there's a time as a head coach when a quarterback is ready to start. When do you think you'll know whether he's ready to start?
Honestly, I have no idea. It's just one of them things where it just kind of clicks, and everyone sees it. I feel it. Coach OB will feel it, but right now I'm just being patient. Taking it one day at a time, learning as much as I can.
I know when he's ready to start. Week 1 of the regular season. That's when I think he's ready to start.
You were ready to start him once you heard the card brought up to the commissioner. Yeah.
Here's the thing, okay? I was in Houston during the draft, okay? I was at their draft party. It was dead, okay? You could hear a pin drop. It was so uninspiring and lackluster.
But because they were praying for number 4.
When the word came in that there was a trade, everybody knew what that meant. And for the first time in the history of that organization, they had actually invested capital on a quality quarterback. Mm-hmm. I personally, and again, you could say what you want about them having invested in Brock Osweiler last year. You know what? Phooey. They finally drafted a franchise-level quarterback. It's not David Carr. It's not T.J. Yates. It's not Ryan Fitzpatrick. Deshaun Watson, when it's all said and done, provided that he stays there the requisite amount of time, will be the best quarterback in Houston, Texas
and of
history.
course, you could thank Andy Reid as well.
Of course, for taking Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, exactly. I was shocked when I heard Mahomes because I was thinking that would be maybe where Watson.
Well, I met Pat Mahomes at the Super Bowl, and I came away very impressed. His agent is Lee Steinberg, the super agent who had some very good connections. Troy Aikman, very notably in the 90s, and had a very unfortunate bout with alcoholism before making himself back into the business. He swears by Mahomes. Mahomes played in that air raid offense at Texas Tech where they score a bunch of points, they throw things, and he's a very mature young man for his age.
Mahomes is the closest thing to Brett Favre in that they are crazy enough to throw the ball when they're not supposed to.
But the one thing that Mahomes has that Deshaun Watson doesn't is an actual quarterback in front of him with Alex Smith, and there's no pressure for him to have to start right away. Now, I would say that Alex Smith is ahead of Tom Savage. I would rather start Watson because I think that the Texans are about as ready to win now as any team that has a first-year quarterback on their roster and not necessarily a big threat elsewhere.
And a salty defense.
A very salty defense. Kansas City has a very salty defense. Those two teams will play each other, of course, this year as well. We could be seeing Deshaun Watson on the field by then. So we had a mixture today, some Clemson, some South Carolina, some Citadel. We'll have all three of us back in the saddle mañana. Corn will be back here in our Main Street studios in Columbia. Hope you enjoyed the show today. Remember to check out SportsTalkSC.com. If you missed any of our conversations with Sky Moore, Mike Peterson, Jeff Scott, Tony Elliott, they're all online at SportsTalkSC.com. We'll also be previewing Week 0 tomorrow, or what we call Week 1 of the high school football schedule, and a lot more to come as we get you ready. We are 16 days away from the start of the college football season. For Phil Kornblue, Tom Hayes, producer Jared Rogers Martin, I'm Will Pelagic saying so long. You've been listening to Sports Talk South Carolina on the South Carolina Radio Network.